I'm Jason Carroll, fellow here at the Wheatley Institution. I'm here today with Jenet Erickson. She's an affiliated scholar with the Wheatley Institution, and she's joined us this week for the Wheatley Roundtable on Family, and in particular to offer and present one of our plenary addresses on children and impacts on the family for children and some of the modern trends that we see. So, Jenet, we appreciate you being with us and joining us for the roundtable.
It's such a privilege to be here. It's been wonderful to be with these bright students.
Well, we want to take a few minutes with you, chat a little bit about things you've been working on, things you've been a part of. I know in recent months you've had some work with an amicus brief and some of the things that have been happening in the legal system. So, yes. What exactly has that project been for you?
Yeah, I was given the responsibility, or just an interest, and then a responsibility of compiling all of the information that we have about what mothers do that appears to be different from what fathers do. And we know that mothers and fathers can do a lot of the same things. Fathers can be very nurturing. Mothers can obviously work and provide, but there appear to be distinct contributions that they make in the development of children that we have had in sporadic places, but my effort was to synthesize that information so that we could have it more easily accessible. And what you find out is they are different, and that men don't mother and women don't father, and that the way they interface with children, the way they interact, what they contribute is in their own way unique as a gender.
Different. Mm-hmm. So some of the legal scholars then had interest in this, and you pulling the research together because of the various court cases or types of things that
right.
we see around the redefinition of marriage.
Right. That they would, the idea, are they really interchangeable? Do children need a mother and a father? This biological design, is there something about it that is important for their development?
So what are some examples of what you found? I mean, things that a mother particularly does or that a father particularly does that's valuable to kids?
Just interesting. It's so interesting to be a mother and to have seen my husband do things and all of a sudden to be reading about it and saying, I couldn't figure out why he was doing that. And now so for example, the way fathers hold children, infants, a mother holds them this way. Fathers almost always will put that child up. And as they get older especially, so that child has a view of the world in a sense, or they'll turn around in the football hold and they'll be looking out at the world. And what we find out is fathers, that's where they impact children, is in their way of interfacing with the world. So a father's closeness to his children, it affects how they interface socially. Playing with children, dads, the way they play with children, really powerful in how their confidence that they have and how they get along with peers. Their antisocial behaviors, whether or not they take risky behaviors, closeness to dad influences that. So he has this impact on how they interact with the outside world. And she seems to be especially adept at building identity, security within the inner person. So how they develop in terms of their own sense of self and identity. And her ways of nurturing that are unique from a father's seem to be particularly important in that emotional development, language development. Dads push kids, they push them to show off that they know information. She'll be right there to help, how can kind of step in, and so you get this sort of nurturing side and then fostering independence, both of which are key to development.
So it starts very young, starts as early as how we're holding and
yes.
talking to infants,
yes.
on into further development, and then clearly into grade school,
grow.
teenage,
yes. Yes, I think fascinating to see how they have the same hormones will elicit different behaviors in a mother and a father. So they're both experiencing hormonal changes when that infant is born. But that same hormone causes him to do tickling and tossing kinds of behaviors that the same hormone is causing her to do cooing and cuddling. And so within their individual gender, that hormone is expressed in different kinds of behaviors that are both important.
Oh, fascinating. So we see the complementarity
yes.
beginning even in the very conception of the child,
yes.
needing the father and the mother,
yes.
but then it literally becomes in the rearing, the nurturing, the preparing for life that's in that.
Yes.
So
yeah.
That's a fascinating. And then for that to kind of crosswalk into the legal arena,
yes.
that was something else I wanted to ask you a bit about. You've had some experience of, there's definitely the peer-reviewed publishing and research that you've done over the years, but you've also taken some steps to engage in what might be called public scholarship or scholarship that's more directly for the public. So
yes.
what kind of things have you done there, and what kind of experience have you had in trying to get to those broader audiences?
Yeah, everyone is a precious opportunity. I feel like my experience with public policy in the public policy arena taught me we can do all this academic research up here and it will never reach anybody in our general population. We're fascinated by these ideas we found out in research, and there's no way to get them to the public except through media sources or a public policy kind of media source. And so I think having experiences with public policy groups and then writing for newspapers, writing about taking science and translating it in a way that makes sense for all of us ordinary people as we're living has been really valuable.
So you've done a combination of, I know you have an ongoing column that you do.
Yes.
That's in a paper, and then you also do some various op-eds type of thing.
Yes, opinion editorial, that's right. And then some writing for research, compiling research that would be used for policy briefs.
Okay. For different foundations.
Right, for different foundations.
So some of that, I imagine, is a mixture of things that you're requested and commissioned to do.
Yes.
And then other things that you kind of see the need and,
Yes.
and step forward to try to.
Yeah, it's usually this combination, right? What are you interested in, and then could you help by filtering it in a way that would be helpful in this particular question? So I was interested in mothering, and then ended up doing quite a bit on daycare and what daycare means for the development of children, and so they kind of lead into what's needed based on my interests. Yes.
Now I know you also have a bit of history too in your publishing, your academic work. Work-family balance.
Yes.
So that also seems to be a crosswalk into the real life,
Yes.
tangible application, not just kind of the theory of it, but there's nothing like trying to make family and work and
mixed
everything
together.
balance, be a part of that as well.
Yes, I think if you're interested in women and mothering, there's no way you can escape this remarkable effort to try to find ways to reconcile or to pull together work life and family responsibilities and needs.
Now, some of what you were sharing with the students and with the campus audience as part of the roundtable this week was talking a bit about that, about a bit of a tension at times that we seem to have in the way that we're currently thinking about mothering and children and the needs of that. What do you think are some of the greatest perhaps misunderstandings or things as a culture or society that cause us to struggle a bit with that sort
Yes, great question. I think when I read feminist writing from the early 60s, and of course they were reacting to these very confined roles that had been part of that family dynamic, of breadwinner and homemaker in the 1950s. The challenge that has resulted from the way feminists approached that was that women were pitted against their own children in a sense. I mean, you hear them saying, must creativity clash with motherhood? Can my own development happen in the context of motherhood, or is it all put off to the side? And so I am in this battle between myself and the needs of these children that I feel.
The child becomes the transition of loss.
Yes.
Here's what I'm going to lose and
Yes.
give up, not a
Yes.
transition of gain.
Yes, and yet women want motherhood and marriage, and sometimes I think we're afraid to talk about maternal desire because it will be seen as an entrapment. And that's a false paradox. There's no reason why a full self, I think if we understood and talked about the full self, would include both education and the finest in development and the deepest relationships that we yearn for, right, in being a mother.
And in a sense, we end up doing a disservice to men too,
Yes.
because that comes off the table for them. So their own generativity and
Yes.
their own desire for balance and the fullness of that. So then we end up having men and women tracking after a
Yes.
similar partial self rather than a
Yes,
than
that
a
is
full.
right. Where women could have said to men, you would benefit or you would appreciate it,
Yeah,
right?
we
Enjoy
need
this experience.
equality, but part of it is the value, what has always been in that
Yes.
traditional feminine and the sacrifice of
Yes.
that. And
Connection, bonding, giving oneself, that men would also have wanted, right?
so now as you've had a chance, both as a university professor and as you come to things like the roundtable, interact with students and teach, what do you see with the rising generation as you share these messages? What kind of response do you tend to get? What things are maybe harder for them to
Yes.
get around, and what things do you see that they really resonate with?
Yeah, I think one of the senses that I get is that, first of all, striking that their college experience can seem so anti-family, meaning that many of them experience a promiscuous campus culture. They feel alone often in trying to combat that. And I think one of the desires is to help them not feel alone, but that the others want what you appreciate, and they would want to have a vision of how to have that too. And so inviting them to be a voice that will resonate with the hearts of more students than they can know right now, and invite an appreciation for these deep relationships that the way they act in college can either help with or harm their future capacity to have those dreams realized. But maybe appreciating that there are more than you think who would resonate with the desires that you have to have. So if we're bringing in students from a more conservative background, helping build that sense, right? And then helping strengthen their capacity to reach out and be a voice for what many would want to have if they knew how to have it.
Yeah, which ends up voicing what is there.
Yes.
It just isn't felt like it's recognized or understood. So, well, and that will be critical. That'll be, I think, a critical part as things go forward. So, well, as you've had the chance, to be a part of the roundtable this year and interact with students, what are you hoping? What are you hoping are some of the main themes, both from the research reviews you've been doing and what you've presented with them? What are you hoping that they'll take back to their universities and take back to the work that they're engaged in?
Yes. I felt like for me in preparing, and I hope in presenting, there's this sense of uncovering, exposing that the way we often see the world and decisions is from an adult needs, what we perceive as an adult needs or adult rights view. And the assumption is if we take care of what we want up here as adults, the kids will be okay. They'll adjust, this trickling down. But in fact, if we were to shift that, to turn it upside down, where children and their needs became the heart of our decision making, then it would start with what bonds do they need to develop in a healthy way? What is primary to their early growth and development? What would that mean for families? What would that mean for our educational structures? How would that change the world if we put children, the most vulnerable among us, and our future at the center of our decision-making processes? Because they aren't there. And thus we see the fallout. I think a review of where children are today, we see a fallout when we have misplaced what should be the center.
Priority. Now you mentioned something too about the idea of children being a compass for us as a society. Say a little bit more about that. What do you mean about children as a compass for society?
It was Tolstoy that first talked about that term, that children are a compass that show us how far we have gone from what we should have done and didn't. And it's just so true. You look at a face of a child, you can see a couple in their dynamic, whether it's difficult or happy, and it's reflected in the face of that child. And clearly they are the ones that can gauge how far off we are from what would have been better to do in our relationships and in our marriages, in our civic structures.
So in an individualistic culture that likes to emphasize what can we do, children orient us back to what should we do.
That is right.
And fit for them.
And I think to know that is where meaning and fulfillment will come for adults, right? When we are doing what we should do, we have the relationships that we would desire and the meaning that transcends ourselves, that gives actual purpose and meaning to our lives.
So in a way, it wraps back, and the byproduct or the secondary is adult needs.
That is right.
It's just the needs they've lost sight of when they lose sight of children.
Yes. Yeah, children will lead us back. Yes.
We appreciate you being with us, not just for this interview, but also supporting the roundtable and for your relationship with Wheatley as an affiliated scholar. It's just, it's great for all of that connection and both now and what can happen in the future for Wheatley.
Oh, thank you. The best people to be with, so thank you, Jason.